report indicates anti-Muslim bias incidents and hate crimes are up 83 and 21% respectively, as compared to the first
Stop the
quarter of
news.
You know, that's the day the circular comes out. Yeah. And it's the beginning of the month, so everybody got their checks. I'm so shocked.
Hey! Osama bin Laden's wife. You gonna say sorry? Oh, hell no.
She probably doesn't even speak English.
Why don't you learn to speak English or go back to your own country?
Can I get $1 for me and my baby?
Not right now.
How about on the way out?
Hey, you came back.
I decided I want just the day.
Sure. You want to take a look at some fonts?
Mm-hmm. I was thinking about getting just black and not using color. Do people ever do that?
As long as the date has meaning for you.
It was my brother's birthday. He was a first responder.
It's nice that you're keeping his memory alive.
I've been waiting for this for a very long time.
I'm with her.
She's not with me.
We're closed now. You can leave. No, I'm waiting for her. She said I should wait for her. I'm gonna go in the back and get some font options. When I come back, you better be gone. You said you'd give me $1.
What do you need it for?
For Nyla. Nyla, my baby. I'm calling the cops right now. Hi, yeah. This is Helen from the tattoo shop. She's back again. Yeah, no, she's wearing black pants and a green shirt. She's harassing my customers. No, now she's outside and she's yelling. She's behaving violently. Yeah, okay. Yep, thank you. It's not safe. Just stay inside, okay? The police precinct is only about a mile away, okay? And they don't usually like to come for these things, but if they're not here in 5 minutes, I'll call them again.
Let me in. Come. I can help you.
One thing I do know is that she's batshit crazy if she thinks I'm gonna let her have the kids.
Open the door.
I gotta go.
Open the door. Why do you always do this to me? Come on, open. Stupid. George,
Come here.
she's gonna hurt
Ma'am.
you. Why are
Ma'am.
you listening to her for? Come
Ma'am,
on.
I
Look
need
at
you to
What
step
are you
away
looking
from
at
the
me
door.
for?
Ma'am.
Let me in the door.
Hello,
What are you
hello.
doing?
I need you to
What-
put your hands
I-
behind your back.
What are you talking?
All right?
I didn't
I'm
do
going to
anything.
be putting some handcuffs on you.
No, I don't want handcuffs.
That's
I need
fine.
to talk
We're
to
gonna
her.
sort this all out at the precinct, okay? All right?
No,
You don't want to be resisting me,
that
then.
I told him that she locked you in and held you hostage.
Not against my will.
Well, I had your back. I was looking out for you.
Thank you. I really appreciate your concern.
Let's go.
No,
Let's
ow.
go.
You're hurting me.
Officer, honestly, she wasn't being violent.
Don't
She
take
was-
another step, ma'am.
I'm just walking to my car, and again, she wasn't being violent. I think Helen just said that to get you
Hey,
guys.
you need to stay put, ma'am, and stop talking. I make the judgments around here, and I'll decide what this miscreant was or wasn't doing.
I respect your authority, officer, but I thought you'd just want to get my side of the story.
Okay, see, this is the problem with you people. You don't know when to stop.
Officer,
If you don't shut up and step back, you're gonna be in handcuffs next.
now, officer, I'm sure we can talk about this
You
against
shut
her.
up, or I will arrest you too.
I didn't do anything. You can't arrest me.
Shut up.
Ow, ow, you're hurting my
Officer,
face.
I'm not pressing any charges against her.
Who the fuck do you think you are?
Excuse me?
You put your hands where I can see them.
I'm Sergeant Adila Ayub with Internal Affairs, and this is not looking very good for you right now. I'm gonna need to speak to your superior about this.
Listen, I don't want any trouble, okay? The lady said she was being violent.
I'm gonna need to
letting
get
her
your
go.
badge number
I'm
here.
gonna let her go. You can come on out,
I can
ma'am.
go?
Yeah.
I can go. Thank you. Oh, yeah.
I won't give you $1, but I will give you this.
Oh.
Take care of yourself and that baby.
Oh, I will. I promise I will.
I hope so.
Listen, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry.
Hey, you should have thought of that before you put on that uniform this morning representing the police.
Fucking raghead bitch.
They say that times is hard. Brother, can you spare 50,000? They say that it's hot in here. Well, I need water, but I'm aroused in. They say that it's a cold, cold world. They don't.
So we just watched the award-winning film Off Duty. It was one of the top finalists and won the first runner-up award at the CMCS Wall of Fame Film Festival that was held in Lisbon, Portugal last month. It's sponsored by the Center for Media and Celebrity Studies, where I am the director. We have been in a wide range of media that includes CTV National News, CBC National News, Global News, Telegraph in the UK, and a number of other media channels. And we are so proud and honored to be able to share this platform and space with a number of worldwide nominees that include ethical filmmakers, actors, writers. And our goal is to give a voice and to celebrate ethical role models as celebrities in celebrity culture, which has a lot of tabloid politics. And I'm really proud of the cast and crew, and I would really love everybody to introduce themselves. And who wants to go first? I'll start with Shetal, who's the director of the film.
See. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. If you're not muted, you might want to mute yourselves. We have a little bit of an echo happening, so thank you for that. Yes, I am the writer, director of Off Duty. I am so thankful for you all to be here. If you're New York time or West Coast or somewhere in between in the States, I especially thank you because it's very early right now. So appreciate you joining us. And yeah, I'm very excited that you were able to watch our film. It was a film that we put a lot of heart and soul into. And so it's sparking lots of conversation across the world. So that's been very exciting. And we're glad that you're here today to continue that conversation with us. Who's next?
Thank you. Aiza?
Yes, hello. Thank you so much for being here, everyone. My name is Aiza Fatma. I'm also a co-writer on this as well, and I played the character of Adila Ayub. I'm so excited to be here.
Thank you. And everybody, you could also tell us which city you're logging in from so that we know where we are.
Sure. I actually live in New York City, but today I happen to be in Washington, D.C. at a friend's house because I had a gig here last night. So, but I'm leaving later today getting on a flight to come back home.
Thank you. George?
Hi, my name is George Trudis. I'm a filmmaker and a professor of philosophy with City University in New York. Samita invited us here as a panelist, or invited me here as a panelist to discuss this exciting film. I'm so grateful to have had the opportunity to view your wonderful film. And I'm really looking forward to the conversation. And I'm logging in from New York City. Yeah.
Thank you, George. Ken?
Hi, my name's Ken Holmes. Hey, everybody. Glad to be here. I'm an actor. I was also invited here as a panelist, and I did have a short film that was in the festival as well called Voiceover Artist. And so thank you so much and congratulations.
Thank you, Ken. Liz?
Hi, good morning. Liz Furtado. Should be signing in from New York City, but I'm actually visiting my parents in Massachusetts. So same time zone, but just different state. Very happy to be a part of this film. Very proud of the work that we all did and very happy to be here and excited that it's from Lisbon. My people, my people. Thank you.
Joe?
Wrong button. Hi, I'm Joe. I'm the director of photography on Off Duty, and thank you so much for having me, and excited to see some of this wonderful cast and crew again, and looking forward to this conversation. Oh, and I'm from New York.
Bashuli?
So I'm Bashuli Deb, joining from New York City. Like George, I'm an academic also. I am a professor and research associate with the School of Oriental and African Studies at the University of London, and I'm also with the School of Contemporary Critical Thinking at Columbia, faculty at Fordham, but I have been with Samita's organization for quite a while now. It started in 2015, I believe, and I have co-edited books for her, and then also written forwards for her. One of the happy things that's going on in my life at this point is I'm also part of the musical theater scene in New York City, and we're having a show November 19th at the Lincoln Center, and it's on Trifles, a feminist play, which is also part of my work. Yeah, all right, that was long. Thank you.
A lot to celebrate. We need a lot of good news.
Hi, I'm Ben. I'm an actor, Ben Mel, and I played Officer Egerton in Off Duty.
Hi, I'm Andrea Marshall. I'm a researcher, a librarian, artist, and filmmaker, and I've been a member of Sumitru's organization since 2015. So thank you very much, and really happy to be here.
Thank you, Andrea. Some of us met in 2015. I also met Shetal in 2015, although Shetal may not know. I actually knew her from 2005. I did a review about one of her films, and that was way back in 2005. And yeah, so I feel like spiritually connected with her for a very long time. And then finally we met it in 2015 and a number of times after that. And yeah, what a journey for the last almost 20 years. Yeah, so really impressed with this film. Of course, I have a lot of questions, a lot of reflections, and I could relate with the film on so many different levels, but in very different ways. But I'll wait for everybody else to share their thoughts. Any question or comment so far? Like, what's your first impression about the film? And this is for all the guests who are joining us today. And to all the cast and crew, what would you like the community to know from you? And what would you like to also share with the community today? Who wants to go first? How about I'm just gonna pick Bashuli. I was thinking of Bashuli.
See, it was very captivating for me. And going by the fact that I have worked in this field on Islamophobia for a long, long time, it's part of my book. You know, sometimes people who have been steeped in that a field don't react with the emotional intensity because you've been, you know, looked at it from various angles and you've intellectualized it. I do have to say the film, despite the fact that it was giving me the content that I was very familiar with and working for years on it, the dramatic intensity of the film, and I wasn't expecting it because by this time I should have been jaded with the material, but the dramatic intensity of the film, I was having goosebumps. So thank you, Shetal, for being able to get someone who's already so familiar with the material to that level of emotional response to yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I do also want to say that I feel like the actors helped to contribute. And I also want to add that Simon Tawfiq, who did the composition for the film, he's amazing. He's wonderful. And I think that also adds an element to that, dramatic uptick, the acting, the music, all of that combined, the cinematography by Joe really helps to create that experience that you had, and that's nice to know that it is so effective, especially for someone like you said yourself, who, this is something that you're steeped in. And so for you to have that impact, we're grateful for that. Thank you.
And I've been steeped in this. I have been harassed for this. My immigration was stopped because I was writing on this. I fled from Nebraska, from the University of Nebraska Lincoln to New York City because my life was at stake. So, but I know where I am at emotionally with this because I've processed so much. So that was really surprising. Yes. And I'm sorry if I hadn't mentioned the other people who have gone into this. Really, it was like really intense for me. Yeah. Thank you.
I just wanted to jump in and say that I had a very different experience actually. It was in Lisbon. And I was just catching a train and just wanted to go to one of the nearest beach city. This is a beach city, castle city. And the transit officer said, oh, why can't you speak Portuguese? So I said, well, um, I try a little bit. But he wasn't, I could have been a tourist, I guess. And so there was a lack of understanding of that. And then I had another senior person later on who said English is stupido, which means English is stupid. So I'm like, okay, I mean, I speak English, I speak two other languages, I read and write in two different other scripts too. And I was like, this is very challenging. But the beautiful part of that story is that with that senior man, I actually developed so much peace and care. And we both had this beautiful eye contact later. We both smiled at each other. So it started with eye contact and then like nice smiles. And like, wow, like that was really magical, So I think, I don't know, like a lot of, these places have very contested class relations. Sometimes I just boil it down to class, because when it comes to something like race is a human construction. And the way we understand or we experience race is often layered, it's complex, it's sort of intertwined with sexism and classism and colonialism. So at the end of the day, I just boil it down to class sometimes because some of us, I don't know, we have certain understandings, right? So I don't know. I just thought it was very interesting about the kind of experience I had in Lisbon where, like it was very different from being in English speaking country. So I don't know, just very interesting and complex sometimes.
I know I'm talking a lot. Can I say something very quickly in response to that, Samita?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I think it was also, I mean, granted, that was not the right thing to do, but it was also a certain kind of resistance to the dominance of English language, right? Because there is English language racism, like we don't talk about it a lot in America, but what you were also getting is coming from a part of the world which is speaking that dominant language, and by no means am I supporting what you're your the people you're talking about said, but I think there is that kind of resistance also.
No, I understand. I know that. I just live with this, pretty much every other day, but yeah, I mean, I just say, well, there are three languages I speak, and this is who I am. I don't know what else to say. So, anyhow, would anybody else like to speak on this? I know, like, it feels like, race and language comes at the forefront, but really and truly, it's a feminist film, advocating for gender equality, and it's also touching on class quite a bit. Who else would like to share their thoughts on this? George, yes?
So I want to congratulate Shetal and all of the filmmakers, Joe, Liz, Bashuli, and the rest, the other Ben also, and everybody else who's not here, because I think it was a brilliant film that really inspired a lot of intellectual response from all of us, I think. And there's so much
part of it. I was not part of the film.
Oh, I apologize.
Separate. Yeah, sorry.
I retract my praise to you then. Yeah. Then in that case, but that said, to Bashuli's own personal experience and to Shamita's personal experience, the first response that I had living in New York for over 20 years, since before 2001, is that this is a uniquely New York film. I do believe that this is a uniquely New York film. And I don't think that the film would work the same if it were set in Lisbon or if it were set in Lincoln or any other place between here and all around the world. So there is that sort of challenge that, especially, what day is it? It's Sunday, November 6th. On Tuesday, we've got elections here in New York. And the timeliness of this film is so sharp, and it was almost like the perfect time to view this film, the Sunday before the elections, because so many of the themes that were raised that Samita noticed and Samita noted are prevalent, right? Whether we're talking about crime, homelessness, yes, racism, yes, sexism, and the classism as well. Just so many things were noticed. And police
brutality.
Action. We'll say that. But yeah, there are so many political aspects that are in this film that really speak to me as a New Yorker. And I'm walking around, I'm watching this film. I'm like, oh yeah. Listen, I know that neighborhood. Oh yeah. That looks just like this. This looks just like that. So yeah, there's so much to be said that really speaks to the New York experience. And I imagine that if somebody had written it, if Shetal were living in Lincoln or Lisbon or Mumbai or Delhi or anywhere else around the world, the film would be radically different. So yeah, I do think that the setting is quite informative regarding the film too. Yeah, that's all I really wanted to say.
That's really powerful. Thank you, George. Yeah, I mean, that's why I always advocate for context-based understandings too. So thank you for pointing that out. Location is key here. And Shetal, would you like to speak to what George just said?
Yeah, I'm finding it interesting that that's your experience of it. I do feel that it has a New York flavor to it, a New York feel, obviously, right? With the locations and the scenarios reflecting a lot of what's going on in New York and in America. But it's interesting to me because I'm thinking of folks that have come up to me to tell me how the film has resonated with them. And they've been international. So I'm curious to know what that's about, right? I feel like, yes, we made this film in New York. It has very strong New York elements to it, no doubt, strong American elements to it, right? But it's been fascinating for me to know that people from other parts of the world are resonating with it, feeling validated by it in a lot of ways, understanding it in some way, I guess in a different way, in whatever way their context is bringing to the film. So I'm just, it's interesting that you say that. And I'm trying to weave together what you're saying with what I'm hearing from other folks not from New York or not from America. Right. So it's a thought process in my mind at the moment of, yes, you're right. And at the same time, it's curious that all these other folks are also sharing how much the film resonated with them and had an impact on them. So yeah, thank you for your comment. Yeah.
I know Ben wanted to say something.
Yeah, I wanted to add an anecdote of something that happened while we were shooting in response to that, particularly being in America with the elections coming up. It was very covert, I would say. It wasn't very obvious that we were filming when we were filming that scene on the street. And there were a couple of guys way, way down the block who, while I was arresting Shetal and yelling at her, and they shouted out, "Go Trump," thinking that I was a real police officer, which was just, yeah. I think that's that moment.
Spooky. Yeah. And then on top of that, to add to that story, so as part of the film, we had at the end, you see people have their phones out and they're recording, which was very much part of what was happening at the time when we were filming it, part of this kind of these kinds of events. And across the street, I don't know if you remember this, Ben, but across the street there was a row of people with their cameras out saying, "Let her go, let her go, let her go," you know. So and those were just bystanders. Those were just people on the street who had absorbed this this culture and this you know, this kind of action when they see something like what we were doing, thinking it was real as well, and also with their cameras out, but for real. So that was interesting. To add to what you're saying, that was interesting. That this is the reaction these days, you know.
It was also very uncomfortable to be a part of it, knowing that people were watching and not understanding that we were filming. You know, the incident that a lot of people in New York are aware of, and maybe in other parts as well, the Karen incident with the woman in the park who called the police on a gentleman who she shouldn't have. I feel like I'm the original Karen in this film, you know, by calling the police and saying that you were acting violently when obviously you were not, just to get them there. And it was very uncomfortable for me to be that part. You know, I had to really dig deep on that. I worry sometimes that, you know, when people are viewing it, that they're thinking that that's my belief, you know, and like just an actor, you know. But
yeah, that is challenging, you know. And I think about that all the time, and I always talk about how Ben, you, Mel, Desiree, you know, the folks that are playing these not so liked characters, I suppose, really committed. You know, you took on the role, you took on this job to be an actor in this film, and you so committed to the roles that that were given to you. And I always say how you humanized them. You know, we brought a lot of humanity to each and every character, especially Ben. I tell the story all the time how you added so I don't know if we can curse, but you've added some words into your line in the police car before you exit, and we see that you've got a lot of stuff going on with your family, with your kids, with your wife, you know, before you even get out of the car. And you were the only actor to do that when I was auditioning, as a matter of fact. Everyone else wanted to change the character and say, no, he wouldn't do that. He's not going to act like that. This is who he really is. This is how he would be. And they were running away from the reality of the character. And you were the first one to run towards it and embrace it and humanize it in this such a beautiful way. And then on set asking to change the line to make it even more dynamic, right? So I always share that story because, but all of you, Liz as well, embraced this character and you know, gave it all the dimensions that we are supposed to do as actors, right? We're supposed to bring our humanity to the characters and bring humanity out of the characters, and you all did that, and I'm always so grateful for that. And also, this is making me want to share that this story is based on a true story, something that happened to me actually in Atlanta in a post office, and that's the basis for this film, right? So I took that story, I shared it with Isa. Isa came on board, and we started talking about story and ideas and character and stuff like that, and that's between the two of us. You know, through our conversations, that's how this story came to be. But it did happen, right? It did happen. And the homeless woman is a real person. And so speaking of portraying characters, right, that's the character that I portray. And the reason why I wanted to play her was because of my actions in the scenario, in the real scenario that happened, left me so conflicted. I felt like I had to work it out for myself. By not only writing about this experience, but then also playing this character so that I could figure it out for my own self, right? So again, just bringing our humanities and our confusions and conflicts and all of that to the roles in such a way that, you know, here we are with this film.
Well, thank you.
Well, thank you.
Can I ask a question, please? Since Shetal and Ben have shared, and Liz have shared this dynamic about the filmmaking process, I'm really fascinated by the whole independent filmmaking process. Yeah, especially in this 21st century where, to counter certain academics, the means of production are quite at our disposal, I believe, that we can make films like this, that Shetal and everybody can make films like this. And to Joe also, where you had such, I think I heard Ben say something like, well, I forget your phrase, Ben, but you really said, let's say the street wasn't cordoned off for your production, right? So with that in mind, can you talk about how you worked within certain limitations, especially from Joe's perspective, is the cinematographer, the cameraman, and how the technology today helped you or hindered you, or how you worked around certain challenges, like not having, it sounds like the streets roped off or anything like that. And, who knows what could have happened down the street or across the street, as Shetal had remarked.
Mhm.
Can you talk about that process and just the ultra shoestring budget, so to speak, that we utilize to make our dreams come to life?
Yeah.
Yes, I could start if you want.
Yeah,
I was just going to say that I remember like doing that scene, and we didn't have the street roped off or anything like that. We were very much in the neighborhood, and I guess like part of like what modern equipment and technologies that we use for films is like everything's become smaller and more compact, and of course we were a small crew, and so anybody from down the street might not think you're doing anything in particular. Especially in New York, people are filming everywhere, and it doesn't necessarily mean they're making the next big blockbuster film. So I think that's really interesting. Although I remember when we were filming it, I personally wasn't thinking anything of it. Like there was going to be a gang of people coming over to rescue this poor woman from being arrested and whatnot. But it is very much like especially in New York, and going back to like New York being a theme in this movie, is that it's like it's definitely its own animal, and anything can happen at any time, which is always sort of very interesting. And I will share a quick anecdote about filming that scene, and just sort of our limitations was that I think when we were filming that, we realized that it was like imminently going to rain, and that we had to film it quickly, and we had all these shots that we wanted to get off, and obviously it's a very big and very important scene to this whole movie, because even watching the movie again, it shocks me at how fast it goes, and things escalate and get to that point in the film, and then it's over just like that. And so we really wanted that part to be good. And I remember we decided, I think as per my suggestion, to try and shoot it in a single long take, which in the end, I love how it was edited, because the edit takes parts from all these different shots and makes it this sort of frantic sort of feel, which I think works so well with the film. And it's just a bit chaotic, and you're right in the middle of it. And that was a cool moment, and definitely thanks to Shetal for listening to me in that suggestion, because that's sort of like, I could either save it and allow you to get the shots you need, or make things more complicated by trying to get things all in one, and all these moving parts and all the actors doing their things. But everyone was fantastic, and it was a very awesome experience with that moment.
Thank you.
Yeah. To actually add to that, Joe, it was raining that day, right? And we had to rearrange our whole shooting schedule. So, George, to your point, talk about showing up on set at like 6 a.m. and then understanding that everything you'd planned is, out the window completely. And so it's raining, and we had indoor shots in that tattoo parlor that Liz is for Liz's scenes and Isa's scenes, and then outside. And so we flipped it around, and we did all the indoor stuff when it was raining. And I was on like weather.com like a fiend, just, where's the break? Where's the break? Where's the break? Finally, okay, 1 p.m. there's going to be a break for an hour. And then Joe said, all right, let's do it in one shot. And so we did. We took 2 takes, and Isa and Ben were probably freaking out because they were like, "Oh my god, I thought we had time."
Let's be real. It was 1.5 takes. I remember because we filmed halfway through and then we had to stop and then we shot one all the way through. If I remember this correctly.
Good
Yes.
memory. I did not realize that.
This is what happened. Right. I remember this very clearly.
Yeah, because you were the one, right, acting. Okay, 1.5 takes, even, not even 2. Yeah, and that's what we did. We just did 1.5 takes, and then it started to rain, and we were like, okay, we're done for the day. See you later. Bye. That was it. That was all we had. Yeah.
I think my biggest challenge that day was making sure that Shetal ate.
Yes.
Yeah, and also, I wanted to, now that I think about what Joe explained about how that dramatic intensity was built, right? This confrontation with the pregnant body and the state, right? I mean, that is what really, I mean, of course, the whole film is very intense. But for me, as someone as a feminist scholar, I think the intensity of that, like, it really peaked in that scene because of not just what was happening with what's the character's name? Isa, the character you were playing?
Adila, Officer Adila.
Yeah, yeah. And not just that, but the confrontation between the pregnant body and the state and how the pregnant female body is handled by the state, right? The brutality. I think now I analyze and I see, what really created that kind of intensity, the kind of shots you were taking, right? I mean, I'm not a cinematographer, of course, but for me, I emoted in that scene. And now you're explaining the technicalities. And thank you, George, for that question, because now it's helping me understand why I did not get into that jaded groove of studying it again and again and again. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much. And Ben, I have to ask, I'm so sorry. I have to ask, did you like, I mean, it was so real what you did. Because I have seen situations like what you portrayed, not in, in New York, but also in Lincoln. Did you, like, were you studying clips on YouTube about how NYPD was handling people? Like, how did you, I mean, it was very real for me. How did you get to that level of realism?
It's funny, I feel a little nauseous as you're asking me this. So yeah, I honestly don't remember because it's been a long time. I don't remember exactly what I looked at, but I certainly looked at police officer behavior. I felt insecure, honestly, as the actor, knowing exactly what to do, but trying to figure it out in the moment. It was certainly extremely uncomfortable for me. But the only answer for me was just to commit to it. And of course, I was dealing with Shetal's body. And if you don't know, that was not a fake pregnancy. She was actually pregnant.
Oh, oh, wow.
But I think it was really, I mean, Joe, yeah, I think you helped tremendously in helping to sell all of that, because I was actually being relatively gentle.
Right.
But
we worked out like, combat stuff. We kind of worked it out ahead of time.
Yeah.
As you're supposed to, So we did all that ahead of time and figured out who was going to do what, and so I felt safe. We felt safe, but it translates as being much more aggressive than what it was.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I have a little question here. Bashuli was the keynote of our 2019 conference in New York City, and she kindly introduced a term there, celebrity counterpublics. And the goal of having that concept was to empower everyday role models in a very contested space of celebrity culture. So instead of just consuming, stars in tabloid media, how can we apply the narratives of celebrity culture in a way that we can all empower each other? Do you remember that, Bashuli?
Yeah.
Yeah, of course you do. Okay, and the publications that came out of that really supported the CMCS Wall of Fame Film Festival that we're celebrating today. And I just wanted to know from you, Bashli, and also Aiza, because you're also the actress in the film. Um, how would you empower everyday life, you know, um, people, men, women, to stand up for themselves, in this kind of media culture that we live in? So instead of just consuming um, stars, how can we, of course, many of us, including myself, are also actors, um, but how can we also further certain stories that we want to not just in films but also in our everyday lives? Hope that's clear enough. What would you say, Rashuli, Aiza?
Thank you so much. I would say, look, as a Muslim woman living in New York City, my whole career has been around, storytelling. But I think for me, it started at a very young age, like watching images post 9/11, growing up in that world of the way Muslims were portrayed in the media. It was always like this bearded dude going Allahu Akbar, which is, part of my personal, it's a spiritual practice to be like, yes, God is great. Praise to God. Yeah. So to take a word that means so much to me and then to completely bastardize it that way, and then it continues to happen. And it's about like the stories we tell, right? Recently, there was a huge thing with a documentary that came out made by a white woman, not Muslim, who called a documentary. It's called Jihad Rehab, and it's about terrorism. And I'm like, ouch, like the word jihad, it's like it means a personal struggle. It's something so beautiful that is part of my Muslim Islamic practice, to take a word like that and to completely bastardize it in this way and make it about terrorism, which is what American media has done. I think oftentimes when stories get told about your community by people who are not from it, we run into a lot of problems, right? So it's about, for me, it's like as a human being, as a person, like it's so important. You don't have to be an artist, but you need to tell your stories. You need to share those stories in the spaces that you're in. I'm not saying in film and in that medium, I'm saying with other people, with other human beings, because, in the absence of us telling our own stories, other people will tell them for us. And then it would always be told through their lens. And their lens is always from up here, from the outside, because they're not on the inside and they're not able to connect to that humanity, because you're always just looking in, you're never in it. I hope that makes sense. So I think storytelling and sharing with community, it's like it should be a big part of, all of our lives in whatever form it takes. Because yeah, I mean, in the absence of it, we see the world that we live in, right? And it's like, it's a dangerous place.
And also, I think, going back to the film, right? I mean, these are the people who are capturing the incident on their cell phones, right? They're not passive bystanders, right? I mean, this is active bystander response. I think that in itself is very telling about how people are empowering themselves. They're not, no one is empowering them, right? But they are empowering themselves, because that is exactly what happened in the case of George Floyd, right? The people who who captured the incident on their cell phones really provided very strong evidence in the case of what happened. So I think that the film itself brings out what, Samita, what you're asking, right? The how do everyday people who are not celebrities, right? How do those people feel empowered to do something instead of looking up to celebrities and following their lifestyles? And I think if I get the question right, I mean, there is a celebrity counterpublics, but then there is also everyday counterpublics, right, which is not idealizing celebrities but actually becoming heroes of their own mission. But also something I wanted to say, the way I have used media platforms is I have started naming. Now I have to be very careful about what I name, right, because that can get me into real trouble. But I have used, once the threat to life was distant, once I left Lincoln, once the threat to life was kind of subsided because University of Nebraska Lincoln was blacklisted by the American Association of University Professors. There was like real heavy investigation into what was going on. There were high profile lawsuits, $11 million lawsuits against the chancellor and the board of trustees, um, uh, and which Vincent Powers, who's a Democratic National Congress elected member, took up that case as an attorney. It went to trial. Once I realized that, there is a certain, huge amount of public pressure of public opinion against the institute, that's when I started naming the institute on media platforms, right? Because unless, and as as Isa has said, the storytelling can happen in many different ways. So I was just very briefly, and then I'm going to stop. Um, uh, there was a platform, like this was in at the peak of the pandemic. So one of my articles was selected, and there was like and there were other contributors in the same journal. It was the highest impact article selected in the last 20 years from the journal. And people like Angela Davis were there. And, those are the platforms where I have actually said what was happening, right? People of, Indian origin, people of Chinese origin. I mean, these were the two nationalities selected particularly by UNL, University of Nebraska Lincoln, and their immigration was stopped, whereas everyone else could go forward. And that goes completely against the idea of, I mean, that's discrimination based on national origin. So, these are the platforms I have used to, I mean, this is another platform I'm using to articulate the story, right? So I think pressure of public opinion is very important. And I think that is how everyday people can do that kind of work. Thank you. That went on for a while. Yeah, I was also sharing my political and feminist strategies. Yeah.
It's something that I tell everybody. And I was quite inspired by Ken actually, because Ken said, we do films and this is our media. And that's really true. Whether you're a filmmaker, whether you're an actor, whether you're a journalist, and we have a number of worldwide, people who are actually watching us right now. One is a freelance journalist. We all have our own media platforms, and the way mainstream media works is often in association, in partnership, and that's something that we can always do. We can always share our space, our platforms, as like we're doing right now, and really support each other in telling those stories. And what I learned as a filmmaker and as an actor is also what Shetal was saying in regards to Ben, is how to really humanize those characters. And that's extremely important, to see the other side of the story, what kind of contested spaces they are in. I often tell feminist stories, and at the same time, like they're actually they're pointing out a lot of patriarchal issues among women. And most of my crew members, and they're fantastic, they are men. And the dancers I dance with, they are men. And so many journalists I would speak with, they're all men. Most of the people that I work with, they're men. And the way I just, tell my story out there is, first of all, just to tell, is to, be there. I address a lot of men's rights also because that's part of gender equality. So I establish a safe space, I make resources available, and just to be human, because at the end of the day, I think what we're really asking for is just to be human, to understand the other side of the story. And this is very challenging because, just recently when I was finishing up my film, there was so much forgiveness that I had to do, like within a matter of 1 or 2 days. And again, I had to repeat the same with another person. And I know this is possible, and I forgave, and it was just beautiful. Very hard thing to do, but we really have to understand the other side of the story, like what challenges are they going through, and why, right at the spur of the moment, why are they acting in this way? And sometimes, we're taught, like, okay, we have to be, whether, I don't know, academics or feminists or, whatever identity we strongly believe in. But really and truly, it's to have a layered understanding, and is to be out there. We're really talking about representation, visibility matters, and it's on all levels. The last thing I would also point out is to know the root cause of all oppression, because there's no singular cause. The root cause of all oppressions overlap, and it extends to environmental sustainability, to speciesism. So for me, often it's class, actually. But, as we go, we're probably going to identify more. And yes, just tell your stories. So I'll just stop here. Any thoughts that are coming in right now? Any final question for our actors, all the cast and crew that are here? What I do have a question, like, what's your, next project, and how are you going forth with, the fantastic stories that you're telling? Shetal?
I'm waiting to see if these fine folks are going to say anything about all the amazing things that you're doing, because I know you're doing amazing things. Yes, I am continuing to share my stories. I have scripts that I am working on. I have a pilot I'm working on. I do believe it is important to get your voice out there, to get our voices out there, right? And I do think that takes a certain level of self-awareness in order to be able to get that out there into the world. And impact people and have conversation, right? I think the main thing for me is to spark thoughts, to spark talk, to spark ideas, questions, so yeah, that's what I'm trying to do with the next few projects that I have. And Off Duty is still amazing me and continuing to, move around in the world more than I would have ever thought. So that is also something that is still continuing to happen. But yeah.
Thank you, Shetal.
Yeah.
Ken, Andrea, I know Andrea was raising her hand, I saw. And any questions and thoughts from Andrea and Ken? Because I know that, you are full-time working artist yourself.
Do you mind if I ask Ken? Okay. My question is for Shetal and the film crew and writers who really created something so fantastically nuanced. And my question is, because we're all sort of talking about New York City as a mood, as a mindset, and as a character study, really. So when you guys wrote this film, how did you choose New York City to manifest in the storytelling, but also be embodied in all the characters created and the dialogue?
Yeah, that's a good question. Part of it is we live here, so
okay.
That's the practicality of it, And so we're just like, we want to make a movie. We're here. We're gonna do it here. That's part of it. And that's an interesting question too, because the event that happened, that the movie is partly based on, did not happen in New York. It happened in Atlanta, in a post office. And I did get locked into a post office by the postal worker, and she wouldn't let me out. And there was a officer and all this other stuff. So that is interesting. How did we translate it over into New York? When I started talking to Isa, she just was talking about representation, and that was something that came up in our conversations a lot when we were devising the story. And as a result of that, her character Adila Ayub came to pass, and then we went back and forth about exactly where she lies in the hierarchy of law enforcement. We knew that she was going to be some kind of law enforcement, and we made her internal affairs because we wanted to emphasize that she's the boss's boss, and then once that came through, Isa actually knows someone who is an internal affairs officer with the NYPD, who obviously is Muslim.
I think that's how the story actually, right?
Yeah.
That's how the story came. So we were thinking about characters. I was literally walking around in my neighborhood. I ran into this police officer woman who was wearing a hijab. And that's a very rare thing. I do see a lot of brown South Asian Muslim men officers, you can tell, and I've met a lot of them at times. I was at an event and it was hosted by the Muslim officers of New York. So I knew there was a lot of them, and I've met them, but a lot of them were men. When I met this woman, I couldn't believe it, because also she's visibly Muslim. She was wearing a hijab, so I could tell she was Muslim. I just stopped her. I was like, "Hey, what's up? Who are you? You live in my neighborhood? Tell me more." And that's kind of when we were kind of flirting with the idea of there will be a cop, and the cop in the original story that Shetal had that actually happened to her was a bad guy, really. So then when we decided, I was like, oh, maybe the cop should be a female, and maybe she should be a hijabi, because I'm always about thinking about representation. I'm like, I don't get to see that. This exists, yet I never get that kind of representation of my own community on screen ever. So I was like, if I'm going to tell a story, how can I do that, right? So Shetal and I had this conversation. We made her a hijabi. We made her a cop. Then the next conversation was, I remember at one point Shetal was like, yeah, and she should do something that should be bad. And I was like, damn, Shetal, I'm so conflicted. The only representation I ever see of Muslims is doing bad shit on TV. So I don't want to do that. So we were like, maybe she doesn't do the bad thing. Yeah. Because in the real story, that's what the cop arrested the woman.
Right.
So then I had a friend who had told me his sister was a cop in New York City for 20 years. And his dad was a cop. He's a Pakistani Muslim guy. And his dad is a cop and his uncle's a cop. It's like a generational cop situation within the Muslim family. And I was like, I want to talk to your sister. So when I talked to her, she told me that this job existed, where she is part of this internal affairs, and then she investigates crooked cops, complaints that come in from civilians. And I was like, I think that should be her job. That's her character's job. So that's kind of about how all of that came up. But when I was talking to her, I was like, hey, so we have this thing at the end of this story where he arrests her, he gets busted, and then he lets the girl go, the pregnant woman. Yeah. I was like, would that ever happen? She was like, oh, that's crazy. That would never happen. But then I was like, for me, look, I think art should hold a mirror up to the society we live in. Yes. But I think it should give us something to aspire to. Yeah. It should show us a different way of being, right? That we can make ourselves better. So I was like, you know what, Shetal, I know it's not real. Let's just do this. Let's let her go at the end.
No, I think he was always going to let her. Go. Yeah.
But in the real story, he didn't, right? Because he arrested
in the real story, he did not.
So we were talking about the real story versus the story we wanted to tell. Right. We were like, yeah, let's let her go, even though it's so give people something to aspire to. Maybe we can bring about, by speaking up as a regular civilian person, we can actually bring about some change in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said before, that homeless woman was very close to my heart, because in the real story, there was I was conflicted about what was happening to her. And then, could I have done something different to have the situation be avoided in the first place? I mean, it's obviously a longer story, but I had so much empathy for this character, right? And I did not want her to be portrayed in any way that wasn't bringing a humanity to her. obviously. I did not want any of these characters actually to be stereotypes, two-dimensional, anything like that, right? And the actors obviously helped to craft that, but I think also being intentional about writing it in that way where they're not just, you know, what's the word? Like a stereotype or stigmatized in any kind. I really just wanted to bring that kind of three-dimensionality, turn things upside down for all of them. And I hope that that comes through, but that was the intention, one of the intentions as well when we were writing.
Thank you so much. That really gives me a lot of nuance and context as a viewer. So thank you for that rich discussion too, and really what inspired you to create as you did.
Absolutely.
Yes, and do our next film. Ken, something that I always notice in you, you create these very positive spaces. You know, you just post and you engage, you know, your community members. Is that something that, you know, you would like to see more and more from everybody? Like, you know, just to, I don't know, just to put themselves out there and create this beautiful, positive, safe space. Ken?
Absolutely. No, that is something I'd like to see. And it's something that I had to find within myself too, because I was, I guess I still am a very kind of shy person. So it helps to just get out there and say, hey, this is who I am. And hopefully you can be like, that'll help people be like, oh, cool. Well, this is who I am. And then you get a conversation going. I want to say while I have the mic on, and I just want to say it was a truly beautiful film. And I want to thank you, Samita, for having me on the panel. One thing that's kind of going back to the previous question, what struck me about the film so much watching it, I think this is the second time I've seen it, but what was really powerful about it to me was the humanity. In the beginning of the film, with Isa's character, I thought we were getting a much different story with the not power structure, but the power dynamic with what happened to her in the store. I thought I was going to be watching a very different movie. Then when she sees your character, Shetal, outside, it suddenly changed, and the power dynamic changed. And she showed humanity to your character, but what was interesting was how the shoe was kind of on the other foot, and she wasn't just dealing with adversity. She was dealing with somebody who was really struggling. And then of course ending with the cop. And I'm glad that that you did change the ending, because that really drove home her power. And I think it would have been a very different ending if you hadn't done that. So I just wanted to thank you for that, and for showing complex humans, and also how we're different in every situation. Your story isn't the same from beginning to end, and we play many different roles within our lives. You can be a victim in one scene, and then you can hold the power in the next. And I thought you showcased that very beautifully.
That's very well said, Shetal. Isa, I know you're the co-writer. Would you like to speak something on that?
Thank you for that, Ken. That was very beautifully said. I appreciate that. I appreciate that insight into the film.
Yeah, I think the idea is like, you're right, we're very complex people. And I think this idea that like you're all good or you're all bad, I don't buy into that personally,
Yeah.
right? I'm like, there's always some good and some bad within all of us. So I think it's really important to kind of, and that's how you tap into people's humanity, right? That's how you make a character three-dimensional. So for us to say the image we see of a woman in a hijab is always oppressed, voiceless, having no agency over, right? And so I think for me, it was definitely very important to kind of turn that on its head. And having Shetal as a partner in this storytelling was like the most amazing experience ever. I feel like we really kind of fed off of each other and like created something really special. And I say this all the time when I post about this film. I think neither one of us could have ever told this specific story on our own. I wouldn't have. This is like all based off of Sheetal's personal thing that happened to her, right? That I have no insight into. And I think like all the research I did with the Muslim cops and talking to these actual women and bringing my own experience living in the world as a Muslim woman to this character and to this story, like gives it the thing that it has become. So we couldn't have done this without each other. And so I'm so thankful for that, to just kind of take a thing that we always see in the media a certain way and then to be able to flip it on its head and be like, actually, this woman does have power and here it is, you know? And yeah, that was very important because I think at the time when we made this film, I think I just wanted to do something very different. I come from a very heavily comedy background and I do a lot of that work. And so I think I was like itching to do something more dramatic, and it was kind of awesome to be able to do this story with all of you guys. It's like a gift. Yeah. So thank you. I also have to go pretty soon.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
awesome.
one last question from my side before we all leave. In terms of distribution of this film, Shetal, I know your film has been airing on Alaska Airlines.
Yeah, yeah, we've got to. Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
If you're flying Alaska, going to the West Coast, watch our film. It's
Yeah,
on
the
Alaska
film
Airlines.
is flying.
Yes, and it's gotten distribution on 3 different platforms. It's been around the festival circuit now for some time, and including your festival has won awards, which has been nice and has been recognized you know, a lot of different festivals, which we're very, very excited about and happy about. Yeah, I mean, it's exceeded my expectations, this little film that keeps on going. And now it's getting its sort of second run internationally, which is exciting. It's going to be shown in Dubai soon. It was just shown in Sydney, where Joe actually was recognized as best cinematographer, which was great. Yay! And then obviously your film festival in Lisbon, and it's been in Toronto and Spain. So it's kind of making the rounds now around the globe. That's where it's going.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So one last question from me, and
Yeah.
I always say this is the last question, but it's so hard to end. What would you like our community members to do to support your film? Like, is there something that you would like to know from our community members? Or when I say community, I mean like worldwide audience, because I'll keep sharing this film, of
Can
course.
I just share something really quickly, guys? If you enjoyed
Yes.
it, go on IMDb and rate the film,
Right.
please, and leave us a comment there because that matters. That actually really matters.
Okay.
So yeah, as people are looking at films and what to program and what not to program, this is like an industry-wide thing, and people actually look at that. So yes, thank you. That would be from me. But Shetal, please.
No, that's huge too. That's big. That's a big deal. So yes, and that's easy to do, right? You just go on imdb.com, rate it, leave a comment. It's very simple. It doesn't take long. For me also, to add to that, I want people to watch the film. I want people to see the film. I want people to be able to have conversations around the film. So if there's any opportunity to show it, to just get more eyes on it, that would be my big ask. If there's some way to keep getting this film out there, and having people watch it and think about it. That's
Okay.
And IMDb.
Perfect. It's a timeless film, Shetal, and I know it's going to have a long legacy, and we're looking forward to more progress with the film. Thank you all for coming today, and I know it's really hard to say goodbye. Time has flown. What a special moment. This is our last event for this year. Stay tuned for next year. 2023 is coming up, but really honored to be able to share this space with all as the last event of the year.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you next time.